Greetings from Ireland and welcome to the Journey Home program. My name is Marcus Grodi, your host for this program in which I have the great privilege of introducing to you men and women who, because of their great love for Jesus Christ, were drawn home to the Catholic Church. We're filming this program from a beautiful garden, rock and water garden in the center of St. Patrick's Seminary in Maynooth, Ireland. I wanted to give you a sense of the beauty of this place that we're sitting. And it's not always true that you can film outside, but here we are surrounded by what at one time, in the middle 1800s, was the largest seminary in the world. And it's exciting to think about. In this spot, around us, surrounding us, at one time were men who were deeply committed to learning to become priests, to serve the Lord Jesus, to take the gospel to the ends of the world. And over to my right is this beautiful church, which you can see in the background, the inside of which the beautiful handiwork of men who, because of their great love for Christ and His church, dedicated their work to the service and proclamation of the gospel and the worship of God. But I'm here to interview a man whose love for Christ took him on a journey also. And Jason Hamilton, welcome to the Journey Home program.
Thanks very much, Marcus.
So how long of a drive was it down from Northern Ireland?
It's about 3 hours. 3 hours.
Okay. Do you get down here much, or is it? We in the States aren't always as familiar with the divisions here in Ireland, and maybe it'd be good to start with a little bit of a history or a description of the divisions here in Ireland.
Well, it's a big question, but
Sure.
Basically, Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland are two separate countries. Northern Ireland is under, like it or not, at the minute, under the British government, and the Southern Ireland is under the Southern Irish government, and of course the Southern Irish government is under the Republic, and then the Northern Ireland is under the Queen. It's a lot of people don't like, but that's the way it is.
And like you said, you can't summarize that in a second, but I appreciate that very much. And that was maybe a bit of a question to ask. Were you always in Northern Ireland? Are you from that part of the country?
Yeah, I'm actually from a town called Portadown, which is in the north, is quite notorious, like a lot of places in the north, but it's one of the places where people joke, like one of the apostles, who's your man? They joked about your man, the apostle, where he's from. It's a bit like Portadown. It's like, it's very bigoted. It's got a reputation for being quite bigoted. So
why don't we, if you would, usually in each Journey Home program, I ask the guest to take us back and give us a summary of where you came from spiritually. So how were you brought up?
Well, my family would have been like upper middle class. I don't know about American, but we call it upper middle class. My dad had a big business, and in Portadown he'd have been one of the big men, you know.
Yeah.
He was well respected, and my mum was English, she was a nurse, and I had a brother and a sister, but we weren't, talk about in Ireland, you're not gospel greedy. We weren't gospel greedy. We went to church at the weekends, but we didn't like it. My brother and sister.
What church did you go to?
Sorry, it was Church of Ireland. It's part of the Episcopalian Anglican Church. So we went, but I used to pray every night. I used to get beside my bed and kneel down and go through a big list of God bless Mummy, God bless Daddy, and the older I got, the list got longer, and I got to the stage where actually I got to about 20 people. I just stopped. I says, I can't get any more on the list. So I just sort of got tired of praying like that. I was about 8, 10, and then I just stopped. I just thought,
was it a prayer out of faith in God, or was it more of a ritual that you went through?
It was like a ritual. When I was a child, it was like, but nobody ever told it.
Yeah.
We didn't have any, certainly we knew, I just didn't have any upbringing. My mum and dad, as I say, went to church themselves, but as happens often in the north is a unique country, but often because of the troubles, they call them the troubles, people don't talk about their faith. So for mum and dad, it would have been very personal. But we never, as a child, because you never hear about it and nobody ever told you anything, I suppose it becomes less and less until it just doesn't.
That's one thing that I've heard in discussions with people, that it's a particularly recognizable aspect of Ireland living is that you don't talk about your faith. And would you say that in itself originated because of the problems in the 15 and 1600s, where really the only way you could be safe was to not talk about where you're coming from?
I actually haven't thought about it. I don't. But my granny, whenever years later, my granny used to say to me if I mentioned anything to, she was Presbyterian, and very strong Presbyterian, and she had the reputation in our whole clan as being the matriarch, the mafiosa, the mama. And if he mentioned anything to do with prayer, you know, she'd snap at you and say, I don't need to talk about my faith. I guess, you know, so you got there.
Very personal.
Yeah, it was silent. You were silenced there.
So your immediate family background, though, was Church of Ireland, right?
Church of Ireland, yeah.
Okay. And you would attend that from occasion? So you would get any catechetical instruction at all during your early years?
I went to a boarding school. It was a boys' boarding school, and it was quite violent actually. It was quite a lot of physical abuse, not sexual but physical. And I went to confirmation classes with the bishop. My brother brought me along. I'd be playing, and my brother dragged me along to a confirmation class. And I just remember falling asleep every time I fell asleep. Like the bishop, my brother, and me were sitting, and I'd be falling asleep. I guess my brother would be slapping me. So God bless the bishop. I'm sure
there may have been some seeds planted, but you weren't aware of it, right?
Yeah.
So you said at age 8 you kind of decide you're going to quit your evening prayers. Did then the faith at that point, whatever faith there was, pretty much exit your life for a period of time?
But then the only other time I remember praying was when I did my exams, and it was about 15. I remember praying, please God, let me get this. If you let me get this exam, Lord, I'll pray more.
So someone in your teens, or would you say this distance away from any faith at all existed all the way through high school and into college for you? Or?
Very much. When I went to college in England, when I wanted to get out of Northern Ireland because I hated it so much because the troubles were very bad, and there was a lot of there was a sense that you couldn't be yourself. I certainly felt I was interested in saying to you earlier about the environment and about green issues and about, I loved poetry, I loved all these things, and yet in Northern Ireland I felt it was so like you were constricted. So I wanted to get out and go mad and do things I couldn't do there. So I went to England, yeah, but certainly God was not my agenda at all, no, and he hadn't been for years.
Okay, so now let me ask you this: if somebody had sat you down and asked you about the faith, would you have claimed to be a Christian, even though you weren't practicing, or would you?
I would, yeah. I probably, like a lot of Northern Ireland people, we have a faith. You ask anybody from Northern Ireland if they, you know, and they'll always, most of them, if they're in another country, they'll say they're Christian, because it's part of the Northern Ireland mentality. You fight for everything, and we don't like, yeah, we'd be Christian, yeah.
Because I asked that because it really is common to many in our audience who, because of where they're living, their being a Christian is sometimes because that's what they were born into, or that's the culture they're in, and maybe because of their particular upbringing, they really weren't challenged to have an inner relationship with Christ. It was never something that was even challenged them. And you say in your own culture, where you don't talk about your faith, then it's easy to live your whole life without having an authentic conversion.
There's only one person, well, two people. I had a friend, we used to have a wee group of my friends, and we used to go out for have a few drinks or go out and party or discos, and he was a Christian, and I tolerated him. I thought he was a bit boring, to be honest, but I liked him, I admired him as well because of his faith, and I did admire him, but I just sort of kept him. And the other person was, when I used to work on a farm. I grew up, and we lived in the country, and we had no neighbours. My best friend was my dog, basically. And my neighbour, who's a mile away at the farm I used to work, he's called Malcolm, and Malcolm was he was my hero, because he was like a lorry driver and a farmer, and he's just an orange man. I'll explain later, but he's an orange man, and he would have been just a great man. For me, he was everything good about a man. He was full of fun and full of love, and I used to say, Malcolm, why do you go to church? You know, and I was sincere. I says, Malcolm, why do you go to church? Why? And he says, he says, Jason, you don't understand now, but when you're older, you'll understand. So and that stayed with
So even he, though, didn't want to
Yeah.
break that barrier to
yeah,
talk
nobody
about
talked,
it.
nobody explained, yeah.
Yeah.
The only one time I was evangelised was a young fella at school. He was a Christian, and we were in the pub, and he said to me, he started talking about Jesus and all this, and I respected him and I listened to him, and he's the one person, funny, I respected. The rest of the Christians I found, I hated them because I found them hypocritical. For me, Christianity was about, lepers, it was about big issues in the world, and I didn't see the Christians doing that, so I thought, if that's Christianity. Another thing was that in Northern Ireland, the Troubles, everybody was claiming to be Christian, and yet the country was killing each other. The people were murdering, and I thought, if that's Christianity, and yet, where's the peace? So I thought, if that's Christianity, I want nothing to do with it. So when I say I was a Christian, it was only if my back was to the wall and I had a gun to my head, I was Christian, but otherwise I wanted nothing to do with it, yeah.
This would be a good time maybe to talk, you mentioned Orangemen, because the issue is that you are living in a country where a majority of people would consider themselves Christian, either Catholic or Protestant.
Yeah.
But like you said, there's a problem there because some are that in name only, right? What brought the country to that? What's a little bit of the history behind that?
Well, again,
it's a big issue.
Irish history is in the eye of the beholder, but as I was saying to you earlier, I've been reading a lot about history, and because one of the advantages of my own experience was I came from one side to the other, and one of the beauties of that is we were brought up learning, obviously, very sympathetic to the whole Britishness. I was proud to be British and proud to be Protestant, and I valued that in some ways, not deeply, but I did value it. And but as I say, certainly the history we were taught when I later became Catholic. I saw a whole new world. It was like, wow, I never knew that about Catholics were this, or I never knew the Catholics suffered like that. I always thought it was just you're so brainwashed when you're brought up certainly in the North. You're so brainwashed in your attitude to Catholics. I actually didn't believe they were Christians. That's how deep it was. And I was a mild Protestant, and I was mild to be honest because of my parents, because they were so good, and they were so moderate.
I know that from my perspective, when we think about the potato famine that happened, was that in the mid-1800s, wasn't that?
It was 1879.
I imagine maybe, is this true? Would you say that the Northern Irelands would have looked at that as a purely act of nature? But when you hear the other side, you realize this had a lot to do with the politics and of the separation from the Protestants and the Catholics.
Well, it's a very sore point. Even now, if you mention that, I don't want to get too much into that side, right, because it just stirs up so much.
That's right.
On both sides. People won't even hear the rest of what I say, and certainly if they're Irish, they wouldn't hear what I say because all they trigger, and certainly from my own experience, Ireland is so full of pain that people, when you say even a word, it triggers. And the only way it's Archbishop Fulton Sheen said once, and I think he summed it up for me anyway. He says, people don't hate the Catholic Church, but they hate what they think is the Catholic Church. And that was my experience. I hated what I thought was the Catholic Church, and I hated Catholics because of what I thought was your brainwashed.
Well, I agree with you, and obviously our goal here is not to bring all that up, but to help the audience hear that was a part of your background. That's from where you've come. Those are the battles that you fought, and you grew up in that environment, not really seeing the other side of it until later. But that was your understanding. It's interesting you said you didn't even think Catholics were Christians, but you considered yourself, quote, a Christian, even though you weren't really practicing Christian. That's common.
It's called hypocrisy.
Well, there's people that will be listening and watching to us. I myself, I remember an aspect of my own life that way, and until by God's grace we have an awakening, and that's what we want to have happen. And but that's the important part of that. At what point did you start becoming open to the Catholic Church? What was it that initiated that in your life?
Well, as I say, I think God set me up basically. So it was looking back.
Was this in college days or after?
It was way back when I was a teenager. Funny, one of the things I loved was poetry, or music. I love music, and I used to listen to my room. And my sister worked in a record shop, and she used to bring back a lot of Irish folk music. And I just thought, this is great. I didn't tell anybody I was listening to it, but it was all like Republican music. And for a Protestant to be listening to Republican, you had to hide it because it was very, you know, IRA music. It was, you know, and I loved it. I loved, and but the words, I didn't like the words, what they were saying, but I loved the, you know, the poetry, and more and more, and so things happened like that. And then what else? And my sister we used to talk, and we used to say, funny, the Catholics are so much more, enjoy life so much more than we do. You know, they have plays, they're much more into drama. They seem to live more fully. You know, they had drama, they had poetry, they had art. For me, it was more alive. Their whole culture was, whereas our culture was more sort of do the right thing, be honest, law-abiding, keep the tradition of our forefathers, which was good. It was good, and it is precious still. But for me, it wasn't enough.
It's become very cold if that's all
yeah,
that there is to it.
For me, it was a bit legalistic. I thought, well, that's good, and it's beautiful, but you know, what about Yeats, or what about Hopkins, or these poets, or you know, these beautiful plays? Is it, you know, for me, is that wrong to like this stuff? And I didn't feel it was, so that's what I say the distance was.
That's what brought you to England,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I thought, you know, what's the harm?
Yeah.
And the Irish music, loved it. Yeah.
Now, was the Irish music? It wasn't. You said the lyrics. You liked the lyrics. It wasn't Christian lyrics per se, was it?
No, funny looking back, I wouldn't even
thought it at that
sing
point.
them. I wouldn't sing them now because a
Yeah.
lot of them were, you know, like, say the joke is about Ireland. All our love songs are miserable, and all our war songs are happy. Because we like a good fight, but we don't like, you know, it's all about Johnny and Nancy breaking my heart and all that. So, but yeah.
So those are some of the seeds that were planted early at that point in the journey, but they didn't sprout yet at those times. Was it after you went to England that your journey kind of began to the church?
What happened was I went to England, as I say, to study environmental science, and in England I wanted to go out with lots of girls. To be honest, I did, but when I was there, I started drinking and taking drugs. You know, taking some drugs and smoking and basically going a bit mad. And after about a year of that,
Went a bit mad. You mean you just got crazy
yeah,
in terms of
I was just drinking.
that side of
Like
life?
I wouldn't just drink; I would drink to excess, and you know, do everything to excess. So after, I can't remember exactly how long, but about a year, I was on holiday with my girlfriend. We went hitchhiking, and I had to sit down on a wall, and I burst into tears. I just said, "I'm so tired. I don't know what's wrong with me." And she didn't know. And then this kept going on. I'd be exhausted. I had to stop, and then eventually I went to a doctor, and they kept diagnosing me with this stuff and giving me tablets, which didn't work, and then I got worse. And eventually, Christmas, can't remember what year it was 1990, I think. But the doctor says you've actually got an illness. It's called ME. It's called in America it's chronic fatigue syndrome.
Oh, yeah.
But by that stage, I was so developed and they'd given me antibiotics, which were stronger, and they're actually super doses, which had knocked out any immune system I had left. So I was actually quite seriously ill, and then in one sense I was relieved because I thought, well, at least I know now what's wrong with me. But then the doctor says, well, you're actually going to be quite ill for about 7 years. You won't be able to basically do much for 7 years. And
Why 7? Because it took that long for your immune system to rebuild?
Yeah, I think it was just so advanced at that stage because they'd let it go I'd had it for about 4 years, and I'd fought it. I'd exercised harder. You see, you're not supposed to, and I'd done everything the opposite of it. I'd fought harder, more exercises, I just sort of fought, and then, but you're supposed to rest with ME, so actually it was more in my system, and then by that stage it was actually, I don't know if it was too late, but it was advanced, so I was told these specialists came from England. They says it's going to take 7 years probably by the time as it happened, I've actually still got it, but at that stage for me it was like a death sentence. I says that I was 21, and I'd going to organise a party for my birthday, but I was too ill, and I just thought my life's over. It hasn't even begun, and it's over. And I remember I got very, very depressed. and I became, as the depression got deeper, I stopped talking to people. I stopped talking to my parents. My girlfriend who was in England, it was very hard for her, my friends, because they didn't know what was wrong, so they lost touch, and then I basically lost touch with everybody. And I ended up in my own mind and thinking, what is the point in this? You know, if this is life, you know what? The thrill is gone, as the song says. I says, well, that's it. Well, there's nothing anyway. I may as well take my life, and I don't say it lightly either, because I was serious. I actually, apparently for guys, for girls sometimes, it can be a cry for help, but certainly, and for a guy too. But for guys, would be more inclined to do it if they're going to kill themselves. They kill. And I'd actually planned it. I was going to plan it. I planned it for one night, and that night I planned it. I fell asleep just before it, and I woke up and I had a real peace came over me, and then I remembered what I was going to do, and I says, what the heck am I talking about killing myself? I was shocked. I says, wow, you know. And the thing that scared me was if I failed, that I knew, you know, I was going to take tablets. I knew it would destroy my stomach, and I knew it'd be more pain. I says, I've enough pain already. I don't want more pain. So I says, no way. But I was still suicidal. In other words, I had a death wish, but I didn't know it then. But I had a death wish. But for a long time after that, I was playing with suicide, you know, fantasizing with it as an opt-out. But at that time, basically, I had experiences. I had a friend who was cured of the illness miraculously. She came to me and I says, what happened to you? And she says, God cured me. And I says, what do you mean God cured you? He says, God cured me. And she didn't say anything else, and that was it. I thought, wow.
Well, let me ask you a question there. When you were thinking back during that time when you had your death wish, you were to the point of despair where you were going to kill yourself, were you thinking at all what was going to happen afterwards? I mean, were you thinking about an afterlife?
No.
Were you as far enough away from the faith you just figured once you did that, that was the end of it all, and there'd be no consciousness afterwards?
Didn't have funny when you're saying that, I did actually have a sense that I didn't think of hell, but I did have a sense that I would suffer incredibly. That was maybe God gave me a sense that I would suffer incredibly if I did this. And I just remember thinking, I don't want to suffer anymore. I've suffered enough.
So there was within
There's
you
a fear of suffering more.
There was a bit of that, the seed of grace in there that was recognizing that this wasn't a good thing. I mean, the reason I go there is that sadly there are a lot of people who, because they don't have a faith background, when they consider the despair of suicide, they think that's the answer to their life.
Exactly. They think they're going to be happy then, and it's such. For me, I knew, as you say, God just gave me a little bit of light to see that was not going to be the end. People think when you kill yourself, it's all over, struggle's over, but it's not. It actually hasn't even begun.
I mean, that was a wonderful gift of grace, inexplainable, but that stopped your hand at that moment. But then you said this friend talks to you about hearing a miracle. What did you think about her statement? Even though she didn't go into deeper than that, did that spark faith at all?
What struck me was that I'd always thought of God from my own faith, as being up there in a wee cloud somewhere where he didn't really engage in life. But what struck me was that this God actually does things. He's actually involved in life, in my life. And then what happened was I had dreams. I had like a series of wee dreams, and basically the other thing that happened was I started to pray. I asked God for a specific thing, and it was answered that night, miraculously.
Well, wait a second. All of a sudden now you're being drawn to prayer. I mean, where was that coming from?
I think it was from that girl, you know, saying that, from her witness of.
Yeah.
Just thought I thought I'd try it, and I thought, well, here's one for a shot. What about this one, God? And it was answered like that. And I went, and it was actually miraculous. I says, that is incredible, because it was answered within 20 minutes, and it was a big thing. I asked God, says, well, and it was answered, and then I asked for something else, and it was answered, and then I thought, and what struck me, it wasn't that I wanted anything even, it was just, but what started filling my heart was God, the Father, and I just had an experience with God the Father. He loved me, and it was overwhelming. And funny, when you started the interview, I felt that again, like God the Father's love.
Oh, praise God.
Like it's just overwhelming, and it's like saturated me. The Father's love for me as His Son, and it was just constant for about a month. I was crying actually most of the month, and every time I prayed, I cried, because there was a sense of
So you were feeling the working of grace within you, though my guess is because you didn't have a background to explain it, you may not have completely understood what was going on.
Yeah.
Was that true at the time?
Yeah, it was like it was just as you say, it was just a feeling. It was a feeling, but that was grace. I felt loved. For the first time, I really felt loved by God, and I says, I want more of that. But I also realised I had to make a decision. So I knew, and I thought this is when my intelligence, for what it's worth, kicked in. And I thought, well, if God loves me, then I've got to start thinking about where do I play my part, and I'll basically summarise it just very briefly, because what happened was my health recovered a little, which helped, obviously, and I thought, well, I want to go back to college, I want to finish my degree, and I had these dreams. In the dream, they were just basically God gave me a wee nudge. In the dream, God showed me to take a chance. He didn't tell me what to do, but he says to trust him. And I actually had a dream where I was on a steeple, I got there, and I had to jump, and nothing else I could do, and I jumped, and a big hand caught me, and I was flying around in the hand. I was very happy, and then the hand disappeared. I was flying. God was still holding me, but I couldn't see him anymore, and then that dream continued for years afterwards. I still have it sometimes, but it was a sense of to trust, take steps of faith, and then I went back to college, and in college it was very hard actually, because I didn't know where to go.
You're still sick.
Yeah.
You're still suffering with the sickness.
Yeah, I was very ill actually, and I was praying in my heart, but I didn't know. Well, so what I did was I says, Lord, right, next prayer, Lord, give me somebody to go to church with, and preferably a beautiful girl. And it's actually true, because what happened was about half an hour later I was in a house of friends, and this beautiful girl walks in, and I thought, she's beautiful, and then I must have mentioned about God had helped me, and she says, would you like to come to church with me? So I says, yeah. So she brought me to church, and then but I didn't like that church, because I felt, I don't want to name any churches, but it was Protestant. And one thing I struck was that it was all based on the pastor. He's a brilliant man, and I liked him, but I says, that's all very well, but what happens if he dies? Does that mean your church is finished? And I thought, and then that started me on a bit of a journey I thought, well, I had a list.
I'll tell you what, why don't you pause at that place, and we'll come back after a break and go into now your thinking, because you're being invited to church, and it sounds like out of God's wonderful grace, He's just touching you a little bit, nudging you back. But let's start there when we come back in a little bit. We'll be seeing you in a bit. Welcome back to the Journey Home. Our guest is Jason Hamilton, and we're here in this wonderful garden at St. Patrick's Seminary in Maynooth, Ireland. Let's pick up, you had ended at the break with your friend inviting you to church.
Aye. Yeah, I wanted to pray, but I wanted to be part of a Christian community, and I knew deep down I needed to be part of a Christian community, reluctantly I should say, but I thought, well, she's beautiful, so that'll do. So she brought me along, and as I say, when I was in church, I was very cynical, and I thought, if I'm going to do this, I want to do it right, because my experiences in Northern Ireland of hypocrisy, what I saw as hypocrisy in Christians. Everybody's Christian, but where was the Christianity? Like Chesterton said, I think. But so I thought, if I'm going to do it, I want to do it properly. So I thought, well, that's brilliant church, but what happens if the pastor dies? Does the church die? I says, you can't build a church in the pastor. And I knew that intellectually. I thought, well, that's there's something missing there. So I says, well, I try a different church. And I don't say that lightly either, because I really thought it through. You know, there was other issues too, but I thought, anyway, and I tried this other church, and I thought, well, you know, Christians should be, you know, from the heart. I said, there should be a bit of heart in it too. So I thought, I went to this church where everybody's praising God. I thought, yeah, I could. I says, I like the happiness, and it's very young, but there's something missing. There's something like, there's a lack of root there. I should say it's like not charismatic, but it's just from what I saw, a lot of praise, and I thought there's more to Christianity than just praising God. I says, where's the charity works? Where's the witness? Where's the historical root? Because that's the other thing. I thought there must be a root there. You know, you can't just start a church on your own. Where God, you know, how do you know that wasn't the man himself? You know, how do you know God asked him to start that church? You know, how long will it last? Because all these other churches aren't lasting. So I thought, no. Because again, I'd suffered enough, and from making mistakes, and I thought, I want to do this right. So and then I went. I was actually Anglican. I went back to the Anglican. But there was a couple of. No, I went to the Anglican, and I thought, this is nice. It's comfortable. I said they had incense, and I thought that's nice. The priest had the bit on, and I thought that's nice. And there's nobody in the congregation. There's about 3 people. But I says, I can do that. I don't mind suffering for that if it's right. But then, and you know, he was a good priest. But again, you know, the old question came back. But you are an Anglican, and there's something missing. Again, now it's hard when you're putting me on the spot, like, but I did think through a lot of things at the time about why. But the sense was, the vision I had was of the early Christians, like a lot of people do. I thought, if I want to be a part of the church, I want it to, in some way, resemble the early church, where people were sharing their money, they were living in providence, they were, you know, loving their enemies, they were doing the radical thing, the hard thing. I thought, and I just didn't see it in the, you know, to be honest, in the Anglican church. And the other thing that worried me was the lack of the historical route. I says, you know, I wasn't a historian, but I says, you can't start a church because you're the King of England, you want to get married. I mean, can people not say that? You know, you can't just start a church because you want to get married again. What sort of foundation is that for a church? And now, I have to just say that when I'm saying that at the deepest, and I do still have the deepest respect for certainly the Church of Ireland. I still love it. So I'm not in any shape or form taken away from the Anglicans,
the sincere folk,
because in fact, I did love them, and actually, it's the thing that I still call myself Christian for, was because of these people who were good people, and I admired them, and that's why I'd call myself Christian through all my wild times. But basically what happened was, after my degree, I finished my degree, praise God, but I says, you know, again, I'm free now from my degree. I want to search now for this church, wherever it is. I want to search for it. And I had an image that somewhere like in Palestine or something, I would have to go and join it and wear sandals. And I really did. I thought, so I says, well, I went on a pilgrimage around Scotland, and I prayed and I fasted. I went to a New Age community in Findhorn, which is apparently it's one of the foundational of all the New Age, because I was very interested in, I was passionate about the environment, about green issues, and I felt these people were actually more Christian than most of the Christians. So when I interviewed them all, I went around all the different leaders, and I asked them, you know, who do you say Jesus was? Actually, because I was very confident after doing my degree and researching, I says, well, I'll ask these people. And I asked them, you know, who do you say Jesus was, basically? And I said to them, nobody claimed to be Christian. I says, well, I'm a Christian. And I was reading the life of Teresa of Avila at the time, and whatever was in that, it was helping me as well to see, you know, I had to really strive for this. And I said to the leader, I says, you know, are you Christian? And he says, well, we have the Christ Spirit in us. I says, yeah, but I says, that's easy to say. I says, but do you believe in the person of Jesus Christ, the historical person that he lived, that died for us? And I was only going by the basic tenet that Jesus has died for us as our Saviour. That's all I had to go on. Nobody was telling me anything. I didn't go, it's hard to explain, but I knew that to be true, and I knew that had to be my foundation, because it come through the whole question of the other faiths. I thought, well, Buddha didn't die for us, Muhammad didn't die for us, he wasn't God anyway. So I believe Jesus was what he said he was. He was the Christ. I believed that, you know, apart from my own upbringing, I believed that. And then, so as I say, and then as I say, but I knew the New Age idea that somehow you take what you want. You pick. I went into the library. It was all occult here, satanic here, Catholic here, evangelical here, Buddhist here. I says, you can't build a religion on your own feelings. I says, my feelings have got me in this mess. I says, you know, I know the truth isn't going to come from me because, as I say, I got myself into such a mess as it was. So, and anyway, I left there and not disgust because I admired them. I still admired them. I thought these are good people, but they're just wrong. I knew that these people are wrong. There's something, and they're not quite getting it, and I'm still looking for it. So I went, and at the end of my pilgrimage, I thought, well, I still don't get it, Lord. Where is this? What? Come on now, you do your part, Lord. Where is this? And I had an image the Lord showed me of people on their knees praying. It was a very strong image, and that's all I got. I thought, wow. I says, who gets on their knees and prays? I says, certainly God bless us, but the Anglicans, I haven't seen many Anglicans. And I thought, Catholics? I says, Catholics? And I says, no, that is good. That is good. That is humility. You know, I says, there's something in that. And I says, well, in that case, I better go on one of these pilgrimages then, a proper pilgrimage, not my own, but an authentic one. And I thought, well, where do you go on a pilgrimage? So I went back to Sunderland where I was living, and this nun who I'd made friends with, and I admired her, and she says, Our Lady wants you, Jason, and she wants you to go to Medjugorje. And I says, great, I don't know who Our Lady is, but she loves me, and that sounds good to me. I had a vague idea, but I didn't fully understand. And I went to Medjugorje, not knowing what it was or anything about it. And in fact, I didn't like it when I was there because I found it all it's just too Catholic. I didn't. You got to understand where I'm from. I just didn't like it. I said, oh man, this is horrible. And but the one thing I did was, in that time, I went to a priest and I says, Father, I went to the confessional. He's an American priest. Actually, he's from Chicago, and he was a chaplain at Chicago University. And if he's watching this now, or you know him, I don't know his name, but I've always meant to thank him. This is funny.
Oh, God bless him.
Yeah,
Maybe this program will reach him.
And I said to him, I says, Father, I'm not here for a confession, but I want you to please help me repent, because I have a lot of sins, I want to get over them, and I know I have to repent. And I says, but I don't want absolution or whatever you do, I don't want it. So he respected that, and he says, that's fine. So I was repenting, and as I was repenting, this is where the grace came, because suddenly the Lord, I believe it's called infused knowledge, where where the Lord shows you something you didn't know. And basically the Lord showed me that what I was looking for was love. It wasn't just a church, it was actually Him in love. The second thing He showed me was that He can I just bring it back slightly? One of the things I found frustrating about my own faith, as a Protestant, was that God is love. It was you had the scriptures and that was it. And I just had a sense of, there must be more than that. God must be more, love must be stronger than that. That is not, and I had this sense that it must be stronger, it must be more passionate than that. Again, the passion of me, when it was the culture thing, the life, there must be more. And so back to Medjugorje in the confessional, the Lord showed me that passion, that love that I was looking for, I wouldn't find it in any other way but in Him. The Lord actually showed me that Jesus Christ was truly present in the Blessed Sacrament, and that He wanted to not only come with, but be part of my body, my life, everything. And then the Lord showed me the second thing. He showed me the Catholic Church, which I had totally disregarded all my life. He showed me like that there was there was nothing lacking in it. It wasn't made by man. That whatever my Catholic friends had disgusted me with as an upbringing, that wasn't an issue, because the church itself was designed by God Himself. And I just end of argument. Lord, you win. Yes. And I said just yes to the priest, and that was it. And then I knew I signed. I totally. It was very quick. Yes and yes. I dissented the whole thing, and also He showed me that I would suffer for becoming Catholic. So that was it. And then.
So it was again, you called it the infused gift of knowledge, which
Eucharist.
Whenever on the Journey Home program, whenever we talk about conversion, we hear the stories on the one hand of the kind of the intellectual thinking it through, but we also recognize that conversion's a gift of grace, and so there's the mystery. It's difficult to explain how it is, and you're talking during in that moment, you realize that interestingly that priest interrupts your confession with the very question that you needed to hear for that grace to spark.
I didn't know
your
what to
thinking.
ask. See, that's the thing. God knows. You don't even know what you're trying to ask God, but He knows, as you say. And God had to say, Jason, what you're actually saying is this.
What had you believed as I suppose as a nominal Anglican is what you would have been in the real presence?
I didn't know anything about it. And this is one, since then I've often given my testimony in Ireland and sometimes in England, but the one thing I always say to people, especially Catholics, is, I says, what does it say about the state of the church when God Himself has to come down and evangelize us?
Well, it might be the state of our heart, you know. I mean, that's the way God works for many people. And that wonderful prayer, you know, every time in Mass we say, lift up our hearts. Well, that's what we're kind of doing, is we want God to open the doors more to us, so we appreciate it more. So you have this priest challenge you, and you're in Medjugorje, when you say yes a couple of times. Did you become Catholic at that point?
Yeah, I totally assented completely. And I went back to that nun. She had a prayer group in England, and it was brilliant, because we all wanted to go out in the streets and evangelize and tell everybody, and we did. We went out straight away on the streets, and it was good fun. It was great. Very happy, you know, challenging.
What did you feel when you came back? I mean, they're your friends in your environment. Did you encounter that struggle that you anticipated when you were leaning toward the church?
No, because as I said to you, God took me out of Northern Ireland because it would have been quite dangerous. It would have been very dangerous where I grew up to become Catholic. It would have been very dangerous. So. But in England, my friends were, just to say as well, when I said about when I was ill, my friends, I didn't have friends. That's the point. They weren't true friends, you know, because they didn't stick with me. But that wasn't their fault. It was my fault for being so stupid, for trying to not, you know, my friendship was built on pleasure and myself, but it wasn't true friendship. But now.
Did you ever have, essentially what you're saying, you had a falling out with those friends?
I didn't fall out with them. It was more like they sort of, we distance, it was a big distance, and I was hurt. But then I did sense, well, it's because it wasn't based on truth. It wasn't a true friendship in the first place. So.
But you're looking back and saying that really your call to England was a work of grace in itself, to put you in an environment where you could be open to this, where if you had been in Northern Ireland, that might not have happened.
Yeah.
Now, after you come back to the church then, did you become active in the church? I mean,
well, I suppose I did, and in some senses, yeah, I did. One thing I did was, again, I thought, well, if I want to be part of the church, I want to be part of something. Again, you know, I thought, I can't sit in a pew with 6 people, and yeah, I need more support than that. And I went to a Youth 2000 retreat, and it was actually in, what do you call that place, where the scapular was given. Can't remember the name of it, but Kent, it's in Kent anyway. This is where the scapular was given. And Our Lady of St. Simon Stock, and it was a fantastic retreat. Father Stan Fortuna was there, and Father Daniel Owens. I was just gobsmacked. These guys, I said, this is what I was looking for. These guys are living it, you know. I said, this is the right choice. I made the right choice, and Father Stan especially set me on fire. I thought, wow, this is exciting.
Talk about your own involvement with Youth 2000, because you were instrumental in it coming to Northern Ireland, isn't it?
Well, basically, when after the retreat, the woman says, she says, what I like indeed, if you've enjoyed that and you felt inspired, I want you to go back to your own place now and bring it there. And I thought, right, wow. And I was studying farming. I was actually studying organic farming in Suffolk in England, and I was just walking along one day and thinking, wow, why not? And I basically had a real strong sense of joy. Real joy came over me. I thought, why not? And the sense was that Belfast needs this. But where I was from, Belfast was choked. It was like a city dying of people, hatred and bitterness, and Catholics are afraid often to be Catholic. And I didn't know many, to be fair, but I just had a sense of God saying, go back and bring this to Belfast and to the north in whatever sense. It was just to Belfast really, but as it happened, it was sort of like, I think, the north as well, but so I did.
So it has started in Northern Ireland?
It has with a process of years, but I think it's 10 years now, but I think there's about 10 groups
Are you
now.
seeing a response from teenagers and to
We
Youth
are,
2000?
yeah. It's actually all over Ireland now. I think there's nearly 50 groups in Ireland. Now, there's 10 in the north, 10 or 12 in the north, and we're very proud of it. But again, it's not perfect. And you know, people say this about Youth 2000. It's not this. It's not that. It's this. It's that. They're all fanatics. They're all religious nutters. He says, yeah, we are. He says, you're all hypocrites. I says, yeah, we are. He says, join the club. I says, you know, we're not perfect, but you do your best. And certainly there's, as I said, it's grown from one group to now 50 nearly. So it's only part of the new movements that's happening, but you know yourself, it's a very precious part, I believe. You know, and the reason I think Youth 2000 is especially good is because it's based on Jesus and the real presence. And that's why I joined it, because it was based on Our Lady, the real presence, and the church. And I was actually involved in a community on operations, based on operations, when I first came to church. And I was very hurt by that experience on messages, and I was deeply, deeply hurt by that experience. And the one thing I learned from that was, never again am I going to base my Catholic faith in anything but the Catholic faith, not on messages or operations. Now, I'm not taking away from them, because they still
Authentic.
Yeah, but I says I'm not going to base my faith on those things, and I would warn people about that. You know, you don't base your faith on. They can play a very helpful part, but you don't base your faith on them, because if they're taken away and proved wrong, where does that leave your faith? So in other words, so
Reflecting a bit on your own background, if you think about addressing anyone from Northern Ireland who might be watching the program, you know, in the midst of all that. I mean, one of the problems, which in a sense, I'm quite proud of you, because you come from a culture that doesn't talk about the faith very much, and here you are with the courage of the Spirit, talking about what God has done in your life. You know, how can you break through those barriers in Northern Ireland to encourage people to accept the fullness of the faith?
I can only speak from experience, and I find it deeply frustrating, even now when I talk to Protestants in the north. And I used to do it a lot more, but I find it was like brick walls. Yeah. As a friend said to me once, he says, you never win an argument chasing. And I was arguing with him, and he was a unionist. And I was saying about the Catholic faith this, and he says, Jason, you don't win arguments, but you make people think. And so for me, I thought, well, I'm not going to win any arguments here. And it could be me anyway trying to win an argument. But I thought, what was the question again?
Well, about helping those from your own country, Northern Ireland, to be open to the faith. What can we do to?
I don't know, but one of the things that I do challenge them as people, as a Catholic or Protestant, for my own walk was for the truth. That's what the Lord showed me. Do you want the truth? And for me, it was the truth. I said, yes, Lord, I want the truth. And I challenge Protestants in Northern Ireland to look beyond the politics, and the Catholics as well. So many conversations, even in this week, there's been terrible trouble in Belfast. Our roads have been blocked, there's been people being shot left, right and centre. And I talk to Catholics, and they come up with the history. I talk to Protestants, I don't know any names, but they come up with the history. And I'm saying, and I'm not totally impartial, but I do believe, because of my upbringing, I've got no axe to grind on either side. But one thing I do believe is that until Christians in Northern Ireland, you know, are willing to get beyond their own agendas, their own politics, life is so much more than politics. And as Bono actually says, you know, Bono from U2, he says Ireland is only a bit of soil that stops my feet getting wet. And I thought that's very true. You know, you can, as the Pope John Paul says, you can be a patriot. You be a patriot, but he says you don't kill for your country, you die for your country. It's a different thing. And I do believe that the problem is there's too many people dying for Ireland and not enough people dying for God in Ireland, you know, and maybe I'd be the first.
Well, I remember, I have to be a little careful, obviously, because I don't know the politics that I even associated with something I might say here, but I remember seeing a sign somewhere that talked about being free from center to the sea. You know, the idea of Ireland being free from center to the sea.
Yeah.
And I think about, I don't know which political party that's with, but I mean, that's when we talk about being a Christian.
Yeah, free.
That's the kind of conversion we want, is from the center
to be free.
to the outside of ourselves. We need to have an authentic conversion within, not just being Christian on the outside.
Yeah. Well,
but from the heart out.
see, Ireland's a very good example because they talk a lot about being free. On one side, I won't name any names, but they talk all the time about freedom, all the Braveheart stuff, freedom. But they kill for it. They kill you if you don't agree with their version of freedom, and they will kill for it. And the other side will kill them if they won't be free. And I just want to correct what I said there about me being the first. That was just a joke, by the way. But there's been a lot of people who have died for their faith in Ireland already. You know, a lot of martyrs for their faith. But and there is now a lot of silent witnesses in the north as well. A lot of good people who are dying to themselves all the time. There's a lot of good people working for the peace process, and in fact, the current peace process, from what I understand, wasn't built on political parties. It was built on the efforts of those who had left the violence, and that's when the success has started.
Maybe really the last thing that I want to ask you is, I know that it's difficult. How do you speak to break through those barriers in your country? But in case someone is listening, is there a word of encouragement you'd like to give them why they ought to consider making the same journey home that you've made yourself?
Because it's true. The Catholic Church is the true church, and they can take. It's not, you can take my word for it or what, but it's the true. It is the true church on earth, and one day it will be the only church. And it's not that you want to be on the winning side. It's not like that. It's because it's true. And when you die, you want to say to Jesus, you know, you didn't care what people thought of you. You did what was shown to you to be true. Now, just saying that, I don't know how it works for grace, because it was grace that was given to me to see that. Maybe some people aren't given that grace. So, but I can only encourage them to be open to the idea of the Catholic Church and what it is, and to move past the baggage, certainly in Ireland, of the history, to move and to actually look at what the Church actually teaches instead of what they think it teaches.
And particularly looking back in the history of Ireland at the teachings of the great saints that were here, and the faith of the thousands and thousands of faithful Christians that were here, that formed the foundation for this wonderful island that's here.
And I think I do believe as well, whenever, please God, there will be peace in the north, that it'll be a sign to the world, because I think a lot of the Reformation, I sometimes think, has ended up in the north. There's a deadlock in the Reformation which is still being fought out. It's like the radio man said the other day, he says, we could have been talking 300 years ago the way we're talking today. You know, it's like we haven't moved on, you know, but maybe in the end, there's only the grace of God will break through that, you know, and but it won't be, there's a lot of people who are quietly living their faith in the background. But
praying.
But I'll just say the ecumenical movement as well, maybe people could pray for Northern Ireland, that there will be true ecumenism, you know, Catholics will be Catholic, and you know, because part of the problem has been, from what I've seen, Catholics tend to be afraid to talk about the Eucharist, about Our Lady. You know, for me, I just say as well, Our Lady for me she has saved me, and people won't like hearing that, but Our Lady has saved me. She saved me I still struggle so much with sin. There's no idea, I struggle with sin so much, and it's only through the sacrament of confession. I sometimes go 3 times a week because I struggle so much. But also, Our Lady, I still struggle sometimes with despair. Believe it or not, it sounds terrible, but I still do. And Our Lady every time picks me up and says not to be afraid, and then she brings me to Jesus. And that's one thing I find in my own life so beautiful about Our Lady. You know, I pray every day to Our Lady to unite me so close to Jesus that I can never be taken from Him. And it's her that does that. She's the key to Christ. You know, she's the bond with Christ that can never be broken. And I wish people could say that, instead of all they say is, oh, you worship Mary. We don't worship Mary, we never do. You know yourself.
She intercedes for us.
She intercedes, but it's so much more than that.
Son.
She's a mother. Jesus gave on the cross as our mother. It's not a legalistic thing. And again, the Catholic Church isn't legalistic. It's a family. You know, we've got a mother, we've got a father, we've got a brother. It's beautiful.
Jason, thank you very much for sharing. I know it's difficult because you, like you said, come from a culture people don't talk about their faith, but I pray that your story will inspire men and women to take their faith seriously and respond to grace and come home to the fullness of the church. Thank you very much. And thank you for joining us on this special edition of the Journey Home from Ireland. God bless you. We'll see you again next time.